My husband said, "Just sign here, honey, no need to read." I trusted him completely, until I came home early and heard a chilling conversation from the kitchen. "She never reads anything, just signs wherever I point," his mother replied. "After she signs, kick her out." Why should we feed dead weight? They were scheming to steal my father's inheritance. They thought I was easy prey, but they were dead wrong. When I changed the locks and left a note saying, "Your recorded conversation is already with the police," what do you think happened next? And before we continue, write in the comments from which country you're watching the video, and also check if you're subscribed to the channel, as I share interesting life stories with you every day. Okay, let's enjoy the story. Grace loved her apartment. It wasn't luxurious, just an ordinary city apartment like thousands of others. But it was steeped in memories of her father. He had chosen the wallpaper for her childhood room when she was still little, and he had nailed up the shelf for her favorite books. After his death, the apartment became more than just a home for Grace. It was a quiet haven, a place to hide from the storms of the outside world. When she married Chase, the question of where they would live never even arose. Grace's apartment, of course. Chase had readily agreed back then, saying it didn't matter to him as long as he was with her. Grace had never brought up the issue of property rights. It seemed petty to her, unworthy of their love. The apartment was hers, that was a fact. But they were family, and in a family, everything should be shared. At least, that's what she thought before. The first cracks appeared subtly, like thin threads of a spider's web, easy to miss if you weren't looking closely. It all started with visits from Vivian Hart, Chase's mother. She used to come rarely, mostly for holidays. Now, she was a frequent guest, dropping by almost every week for no particular reason. During these visits, Vivian loved to pontificate about family values, about how important it was for all family members to have equal rights. "Family means sharing, Gracie," she would say, sipping tea in the kitchen. "What's one person's should belong to the others too." "But how does it work with you? You're the owner of the apartment. And what about Chase? Just a lodger?" These conversations unsettled Grace. It felt like Vivian was hinting at something. Grace tried to explain to her mother-in-law that she and Chase didn't divide their property, that everything was shared. But Vivian would just smirk in response, as if she didn't believe her. Chase seemed not to notice these talks, or he pretended not to. Lately, he had been avoiding financial discussions altogether. They used to plan big purchases together and talk about the budget. Now, Chase dodged those conversations, citing busyness. "Darling, I trust you completely," he'd say. "You handle these things better than I do. Do what you think is best." This trust didn't calm Grace. Instead, it made her wary. It felt like Chase was just shifting responsibility onto her, unwilling to get involved in important decisions. Grace didn't scrutinize those documents. She trusted Chase. But one day, while signing another lengthy contract, she noticed fine print at the bottom of the page. Something about it seemed suspicious. She tried to read it, but Chase hurried her. "Just sign it already, Gracie," he said. "I don't have time. You can figure it out later." Grace didn't think much of it, then she signed and forgot. But the incident stuck in her mind. She started noticing that Chase often rushed her when it came to signing documents, as if he didn't want her to read them carefully. One evening, when Chase was out meeting friends, Grace decided to sort through the papers that had piled up recently. She pulled out the folder of documents she'd signed lately and began examining them closely. Most were ordinary bills and receipts, but one caught her eye. It was a power of attorney in Chase's name, granting him the right to represent her interests in various organizations. Grace didn't remember signing such a thing. She had always handled her own affairs. Why would she need a power of attorney for Chase? The inner unease that had been growing in Grace reached its peak. For the first time, she felt like something was being hidden from her. Her intuition whispered, "Look closer. Something's wrong." Grace decided to check all the documents related to the apartment. She pulled out the ownership certificate, the sales contract, her father's will. Everything was in order, but something still nagged at her. She went through the papers again and again, trying to pinpoint what was bothering her. Suddenly, her gaze fell on one of the recent documents she'd signed at Chase's request. It was some kind of loan agreement. Grace didn't remember borrowing money. She read it carefully. It turned out she had supposedly taken a large sum from an unfamiliar company, with her apartment as collateral. A chill ran through Grace. She realized she was in a complicated and dangerous situation. She didn't understand who or why was trying to deceive her, but she knew she had to act. That night, Grace barely slept. She lay in bed, thinking about what was happening. She tried to figure out who she could trust, Chase, Vivian, or were they both involved? Grace got home half an hour earlier than usual. She didn't have a plan. She'd just taken time off work to consult a lawyer about property division in case of divorce. Just in case. But the lawyer turned out to be incompetent, unable to explain anything clearly, and she headed home in a frustrated mood. The key turned in the lock, and she entered the hallway, kicking off her shoes and coat. The apartment was quiet, as usual at that time. But as she approached the kitchen, she heard muffled voices. The door was ajar, with a thin beam of light slipping underneath. Her intuition, now firmly rooted in her heart, made her stop. She listened. Just her signature left, she heard Chase's voice. It sounded strange, tense, not like usual. Grace's heart skipped a beat. She decided to act and immediately turned on her voice recorder, slipping it into her pocket. "She doesn't even look at what she's signing," Chase continued. "She just puts her name where I point. Trusts me." "Good girl," Vivian's voice replied, laced with a satisfied, predatory tone that sent shivers down Grace's spine. "After she signs, let her go. Why do we need extra people in the apartment? You deserve a share. Everything should be fair. Look where she got this apartment from her daddy. And before the marriage, too. It's unfair." Grace felt like something snapped in her head. Her mother-in-law's words hit like poisonous arrows, striking her heart. She had always tried to be a good wife, a loving daughter-in-law. She had welcomed Vivian into her home, endured her constant nitpicking and hints, and all this time, a conspiracy had been brewing behind her back. "But Mom, how do I tell her?" Chase's voice sounded uncertain, even pitiful. "She loves this apartment. She grew up here. So many memories of her father." "Nonsense. Love fades, but money lasts," Vivian snapped. "Besides, you're the man. You need to handle things. Tell her it's necessary for our common good. She's a pushover. She'll swallow it all." Grace felt tears rolling down her cheeks. Chase's betrayal was like a knife in the back. She loved him, trusted him. She believed they were family, building a future together. But he was just a puppet in his mother's hands, ready to betray her for a piece of real estate. She stood pressed against the wall, listening as they discussed the details of their plan. They talked about a gift deed, documents Chase had already slipped her to sign, how they planned to force her out of the apartment. Each word echoed in her head with a dull pain. At some point, Grace couldn't take it anymore. She pulled away from the door and, stifling a sob, quietly went to the bedroom. There, she collapsed on the bed and buried her face in the pillow, sobbing to muffle the pain and despair overwhelming her. The world she had built so carefully crumbled in an instant. Trust, love, hopes all shattered. She felt betrayed, deceived, humiliated. How could they do this to her? How could Chase betray her love for money and his mother's influence? Lying on the bed, Grace recalled all the little things that had seemed unimportant before. She remembered Vivian's more frequent visits, her insistent talks about shared good, about family being one whole. She recalled Chase's evasive answers to her financial questions, his request to sign documents without reading. It all now formed a single picture, a horrific, sinister puzzle. For the first time in years, Grace felt truly alone. She had always been trusting, open, believing in the best in people. She thought love and honesty were the foundation of any relationship. But now she realized she was wrong, that in this world there were people ready to betray, deceive, and use others for their own gain. Grace rose from the bed, wiped her tears, and looked in the mirror. The reflection showed a woman she barely recognized, one with red, tear-swollen eyes, but with a firm, determined gaze. In that moment, an inner transformation occurred in Grace. She stopped being the trusting, naive girl who was easy to manipulate. She became a woman ready to fight for herself and what was dear to her. Then she left the bedroom and headed to the kitchen. Chase and Vivian were still sitting there, discussing something. They didn't notice her approach. Grace stopped in the doorway and cleared her throat. Chase and Vivian jumped and turned. Surprise, mixed with anxiety, froze on their faces. "Grace, you're home already?" Chase asked, trying to hide his nervousness. "Yes, I'm home," Grace replied evenly, looking him straight in the eyes. That same night, with trembling hands, Grace dialed Kendra, her school friend who was now a successful lawyer. The rings dragged on agonizingly until a sleepy voice answered on the other end. "Kendra, it's Grace. Sorry it's so late, but I really need your help." Kendra's voice instantly became serious. "Grace, what's wrong? You're shaking. Tell me." Grace choked on her words, recounting the overheard conversation, her suspicions, fear, and despair. Kendra listened silently, only occasionally asking clarifying questions. When Grace finished, silence hung in the air. "Grace, I get it," Kendra finally said. "This is serious, very serious. But don't panic. The key now is to act coolly. Come to me tomorrow morning. We'll see what we can do." In the morning, as dawn barely broke, Grace was already sitting in the waiting room of Kendra's law office. Kendra greeted her reservedly, but sympathy and determination shone in her eyes. "Okay, let's see what we've got," Kendra said, seating Grace at a large table piled with papers. "Did you bring all the documents Chase had you sign?" Grace nodded, pulling a thick folder from her bag. Kendra carefully examined each sheet, commenting quietly. "Loan agreement, consent for data processing. What's this? Power of attorney for representation. Ah, here it is." Kendra pulled a plain sheet of paper from the middle of the folder, folded in quarters. Unfolding it, she frowned. "What is that?" Grace asked, peering over her friend's shoulder. "This is a draft gift deed for your apartment," Grace not filled out, but with your details. "It looks like they plan to insert Chase's name and slip it to you with the other papers." Grace's breath caught. She felt the world crumbling around her again. But how? Why? "They wanted to take your apartment, Grace. Through deception, forgery. That's a crime if proven." Kendra pushed the draft away and rubbed her nose bridge. "Good thing you came. We can stop this. But we have to play by their rules for now." "What do you mean?" "Stay silent. Don't say anything to Chase or his mom. Act normal. Be sweet and trusting while we gather evidence." "What evidence?" "I only have this draft and the recording of their conversation."
"That's something already. The draft is attempted fraud, document forgery. The recording confirms their criminal intent. But we need more."
"Record audio of all their talks, especially about the apartment. Make copies of every document Chase gives you to sign. Photograph, scan whatever. Document every step." "But how can I pretend, Kendra? It's disgusting being around them." "I understand, Grace, but it's necessary. Imagine you're an actress. Play the role of the trusting wife. It'll buy us time to gather enough for the police and court." Kendra stood from the table and went to the window. "One more thing. Trust no one but me, not even your closest people. In this situation, you have to be very careful." Over the next 2 days, Grace lived as if in a dream. She pretended, smiled at Chase and Vivian, listened to their lying words, and acted like she suspected nothing. Inside, she boiled with anger and hurt, but she forced herself to keep up appearances. Every time Chase asked her to sign documents, she secretly photographed them on her phone and sent them to Kendra. She turned on the recorder whenever she was near Chase and his mother. Vivian seemed to sense something was off. She started watching Grace more closely, asking tricky questions, trying to probe her thoughts. But Grace held firm. She answered evasively, gave compliments, praised her cooking skills. One evening when Chase was at work, Vivian came into Grace's room. "Gracie," she cooed sweetly, "I was thinking maybe we could go to the theater. We haven't gone out together in ages." "Oh, Vivian, I'd love to," Grace replied, trying not to show her disgust, "but my head is pounding." "Maybe another time?" "Well, suit yourself," Vivian drawled disappointedly. "I just wanted to have a heart-to-heart chat." After Vivian left, Grace locked the door, leaned against it, and sighed heavily. She felt exhausted and drained, but she knew she couldn't give up. She had to see this through. In those 2 days, she barely slept, dedicating all her time to gathering evidence and consulting Kendra. Together, they devised a plan in case Chase and Vivian acted first. On Kendra's advice, Grace withdrew money from her personal account and transferred it to her mother's. End quote. She also closed all joint accounts with Chase so he couldn't access her funds. Grace knew that sooner or later, she'd have to face Chase and his mother head on. Their betrayal had made her stronger and more resolute. The hidden calm she showed them was just a mask. Beneath it lay steel determination and readiness for battle. Grace could barely hold back from unleashing all her pain and anger on them. But she knew she had to wait for the right moment. That moment came in the evening, when Chase and Vivian went out for their usual walk. Grace waited until they left the building, then got to work. She called a locksmith, and within an hour, new secure locks were on the apartment door. She carefully packed the old ones in a box and hid it in the closet. The final touch was a note. Grace thought long about what to write. She wanted to pour out everything in her soul, but she knew emotions weren't key now. Cold calculation was. In the end, she wrote a short but pointed message. You tried to deceive me out of my father's inheritance. My mistake was trusting you, but now everything will be by the law. P.S. The audio recording of you discussing it is already with the investigator. She placed the note in a visible spot, taping it to the door. When everything was ready, Grace felt a strange relief. The fear and anxiety that had tormented her lately eased a bit. She was no longer a victim. She was a fighter. She had done all she could, and now it was just a matter of waiting. Around 10 p.m., Grace heard noise at the door. Chase and Vivian were back. She hid in the far room, listening. What's going on? She heard Chase's irritated voice. The key doesn't fit. Maybe you're mixing it up? Vivian replied. Try again. Grace heard Chase try unsuccessfully several times to open the door. Soon his irritation turned to rage. What the hell is happening here? He yelled. It's like someone changed the locks. Vivian muttered something, but Grace couldn't make it out. Then silence fell. After several long, agonizing minutes, an explosion of fury. It's her, Chase screamed. She set this all up. Don't say that, Chase. Vivian tried to calm him. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding? What misunderstanding? Chase roared. She threw us out on the street. Grace heard them arguing, blaming each other. It disgusted her to listen. She knew they were pretending, that it was all a show for her. But now the show was over. Finally, Chase must have noticed the note on the door. He tore it off and read it aloud. What nonsense, he exclaimed. What inheritance? What audio recording? Give it here. Vivian snatched the note and read it herself. Her face stretched in horror. This is very bad, Chase, she whispered. If she has evidence. What evidence? Chase was furious. She can't prove anything. It's all her imagination. Don't be so sure. Vivian looked scared. You forgot about that kitchen talk? Chase went silent. Grace heard his heavy breathing. She knew he was remembering that fateful conversation she had overheard, the one that ruined her life. So what? Chase finally said. It means nothing. We were just discussing. Don't lie, Chase, Vivian interrupted. I know what you wanted to do, and I helped you. If she tells everything. She won't tell. Chase tried to convince himself and her. She loves me too much. Grace smirked to herself. Loved. That was before she knew the truth. Loved, she said quietly, stepping out of the apartment. Chase and Vivian turned. Horror froze on both their faces. Grace, Chase muttered. You misunderstood everything. I understood perfectly. Grace cut him off. I heard your conversation. I saw the draft gift deed. I know what you wanted to do. It's all untrue, Vivian shrieked. We just wanted to help you. You're so naive. You'd lose everything. Shut up, Mom, Chase hissed. You're just making it worse. I didn't make anything worse. Vivian was hysterical. I wanted you to have it good. You deserve more than this enough. Grace raised her voice. I don't want to hear any more. I filed a police report. They'll sort it out. The police? Chase paled. Have you gone mad? You want to jail your own husband? I want justice to prevail, Grace replied. If that means jailing you, so be it. Chase tried to approach Grace, but she stepped back. Don't come near me, she said. I don't believe you anymore. Grace, please, Chase begged. Let's talk it out. We can work something out. There's nothing left to discuss, Grace said. It's all decided. She turned and walked away, leaving Chase and Vivian standing at the closed door. She knew a tough fight lay ahead, but she was ready for it. While waiting for the police, Grace sat and texted Kendra. Thanks, friend, you saved me. Minutes later came the reply. Always here. Now the main thing. Hold on. Justice will be on your side. Grace smiled. She knew Kendra was right. Justice would triumph, and she would do everything to make it happen. All right, thanks for listening.